snowing.
Yes, it's snowing in the Bay Area.
That's insane. Like, it's cool, but it's also terrifying at the same time.
You guys know that scene? It's not even, you don't even have to know the show because it's a meme, but It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Charlie. And Charlie's looking, I forgot what the episode's about where he's like, is it where they give him the fake drugs? I think so, but he's just like, like that's literally me just like yelling like global warming, like it's happening, like how can you not believe it right now?
I know, like there's really people out there that are convinced that it's all a hoax, and I'm just like, what more evidence do you need?
Like there's somebody skiing in Palo Alto. I saw the news this morning.
Dude, I can't.
I think it was that hill off of Page Mill, and he was like skiing down like in Palo Alto.
That's so funny.
I can't believe that.
I know. Well, right outside this morning, it was
white.
white.
I sent our group a message. You saw it? Yeah, I sent the group chat that we have.
The Facebook post?
No, I recorded the front door and I zoomed in on the mountains that are like right there.
Yeah, it looks super cute, but you know, we shouldn't.
Yeah,
shouldn't be.
Truly, what a time to be alive. Like, we have been living in some apocalyptic times.
We literally just have to drive like 15-20 minutes and we can find some snow this weekend. Mm-hmm. Although I don't know if I don't think I can't even drive in like regular conditions. I don't think I can make it in the snow.
I hate driving.
Yeah,
same.
Hate it. But you
forever.
guys, today we have Diana on the podcast. Thank you, Diana, for coming on.
Hi, Diana.
Thanks for having me.
So, just so everybody could get to know you a little bit better, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? What do you like to do?
Yeah, so I am Diana Escobar. I was born in the Daly City Bay Area kind of region, born and raised. We haven't really moved around too much, but I did go to school in San Jose for 5 years. I went to San Jose State.
That's right, yes.
I studied communication studies and specified in interpersonal communication.
Dude, out of all the conversations we've had, I've never asked you what you studied. I know you went to San Jose. I know you would go, like, party down there before. Never have asked you. I'm like, oh, really?
You're like, this is news to me.
So I have 2 fun questions to kind of open it up so people can get to know you. So first question that I want to ask you is, tell us something that you're looking forward to doing this year. An experience, a trip, something that you're looking forward to doing.
Yeah, I think definitely, like, I'm not a materialistic kind of person. Like, I definitely cherish experiences a lot more, and I, like, for so long was just going to all kinds of, like, club events, like, going out every weekend. Like, I'm just kind of over it, and I want to see what's out there and just get to know more of the world little by little. And I also am looking into moving out of my house, which is definitely a big step. I've moved for college, but I was kind of going back and forth for school, and it wasn't like fully 100% out on my own. Mm-hmm. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But I know it's going to bring up some conflict when the time arises. My mom's supportive about it now, but when it's starting to like get surreal and like I'm actually packing up everything, like I just know, like,
have you told her?
I have talked to her about it, and it's like she kind of choked up a little bit, you know. She's like empty nesting a little bit, like kind of mentally preparing.
That's such a big thing in especially Latino culture, moving out, and how scary it could be.
Yeah.
Dude, I did it and I lasted a week.
I
came right back home. I was like, Mom, I fucking hate it out here. She was like, come back. I was like, bet, okay. I'm on my way.
I love that. And then last question. What is your superpower?
I would say in my life, I feel that my studies really allowed me to develop a little bit more emotional intelligence that really helped the dynamic in my family, and I'll get a little bit more into it later because it really played a big part in my life over the last couple of years. And I feel that my family and I are in such a wonderful place in the way that we communicate, just because like we ask more questions. Like, I feel like in our culture, like it's just like you don't question authority, but like when you're blatantly being disrespected or like attacked emotionally, like I feel like you have to in order to get past that tension and just be able to approach those situations differently. And like for my mom to have made such a huge change, and my brother, like he used to have such an explosive kind of personality, and now like the way we approach things. And I love hearing when they say, well, it's because of the way that Diana has like talked to us about, you know, approaching situations and just like thinking about things twice before we say something, because that really makes a huge difference.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
I love that. And brings me to the last thing that I want to ask both of you actually is, so I met Diana through Nancy. Nancy, how did you guys meet?
So we were trying to figure that out. Because I know how we met. We met through my husband's, one of his best friends is Diana's boyfriend. And we invited them over for a dinner party at our old house when we used to live in the Santa Cruz Mountains. It was really cool because, like, I remember, I don't know if you know this, but your boyfriend would always be like, I can't wait for you to meet Diana. And I was like, why? And he's like, because she smokes a lot of weed. And
He would always tell me, he's like, you would get along so well with the girls in my friend group.
And I was like, oh, she's a smoker. And I was like, and like right now I am taking a break just because of other life choices, but we're in California, okay? It's 100% legal, recreational here. You can we're getting some delivered right now. It's that easy. You just do it from your phone. And so like they came over and I remember I was like, hi. And like, I don't know if you remember this, but the day that we met, you guys were the first ones that got to our house for the dinner party. And her boyfriend walked into the screen door. And I was fucking dying because I was like, dude, and he's like probably all nervous, like trying to impresionar a ella. And, like, it's the first time like we meet, like it was like all of his like, you know, the big friend group, and it was the first time like everyone met her. And he goes and he crashes.
Wait, side question: Did it rip again? Because remember,
he ripped it.
Oh, okay,
That was him.
So it was ripped.
Wait, did he also break the pantry door?
So it ripped. It was ripped. I don't know if you know this. We had just gotten it fixed the week before.
I'm dead. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
I have
and then
no
he went
idea.
and he crashed into it. And yes, Nate, if you're watching this, you did break our pantry door in the Super Bowl in 2022. We got it fixed. Don't worry. But yeah, and so yeah, I mean, like I feel like I don't want to say like we didn't get along. We did. I think we just weren't seeing each other as often. But like after that, like after a few months and seeing each other more and more, I feel like we got along pretty well. And Diana went with me to my bachelorette party.
Yes.
And that's where
that's
she
where I
met.
met
That's where Lizzie
Diana.
met her. And you know, it was really cool because she like was braiding her hair and like makeup. And so if you guys don't know,
Yes.
Diana is a makeup artist and hairstylist. I was like, when you were talking, I was looking at your eyes right now. I'm like, did you draw those flowers on you?
No, it's just a little stamp.
Oh, nice.
I draw my little hearts, but not the flowers.
Oh, it still looks good.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I love it.
But yeah, where can people find you at if they want more info on your makeup hairstylist?
So I am on TikTok and Instagram. You can find me at Mariposa Magic Beauty. I do more creative kind of makeup looks. I'm really into the rave festival music scene. So I like more kind of like whimsical looks, more like rhinestones, the drama. Like there's no in between. Either I look like a homeless person or I am glammed up to the nines. Like,
It makes me so sad that like we didn't know each other during my rave days, because like now that you know you're in yours and I'm just like, oh, my knees cannot handle that. But I do know that you do Insomniac events.
I do.
And you are a hairstylist there.
Yes, I am.
Dude, that's so cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's such a cool way to hack it too, because you get to go to it, but you also
get paid to
be
go.
there.
You have
Yeah.
an entry for that?
No, they provide a wristband for you, and if you're camping, if the festival includes camping, you don't pay for camping either. It's really nice. They do
Nice.
catering during that bounce time.
Nice. I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right. So today's episode it's gonna be a little heavy. We're not gonna lie.
Yes.
But so I should have brought this up earlier, but one of the things about I felt like I was able to like connect really quickly with Diana is that when I met her, I want to say it was a few months after our dad passed away. And like I was telling her earlier, like, and of course when she followed me, I like, you know, was just going through her Instagram, just like, who is this person, you know, like, and I I found, I think, a post that you dedicated to your dad because your dad passed away, I believe, 6 months before our dad passed away. And I don't know if you know this, but I think a lot of the messages that we exchanged and like you talking to me helped me a lot because I was definitely like, I felt very lonely.
Yeah.
You know, but I just being able to know that like, oh, like somebody else is going through something super similar and like, dude, she's like fucking thriving. Like, I'm just like, I can do it too.
Yeah.
It hits different talking to somebody that's also been through the same thing.
Yeah.
Huge. I had a similar experience. I have a friend that I went to high school with, and we only really talk on Instagram, but her mom also passed away when she was younger. I don't know how long it's been yet, but she reached out to me. She sent us flowers, and you know, it's this friend that you haven't seen for years that realizes though, like, hey, like I went through this, like I'm here to support you. And she has 2 kids, you know, and when I asked her something about like my kids and my grieving, she responded to me, like gave me advice, something that I wanted to hear. And I didn't feel like I was crazy because she resonated with me, you know. And I think there's situations that we've all had and that we've had to face where we feel so alone, and then out of nowhere, like this little, I don't know what you call it, like energy, something like connects us to each other, and it happens like at the moment where you need it the most.
Exactly.
And I think, you know, I think we've done it once where we've gone to dinner, but the reason why I remember I set up that dinner for the 3 of us is because I think you posted something, or I don't know who it was, one of us did, but then one of us was like, dude, fucking same, like I'm just hella going through it right now, I miss my dad. And I was just like like, oh my god, like I just feel like we have very much like, there's certain things about it that are very similar, you know, and it's nice being able to have friends, be able to first call you a friend, and also being able to be open up to you about these things, and like you open up to us about them too, you know.
So if you don't mind, you know, and whatever you're comfortable with, like, can you tell us a little bit about your dad?
Yeah.
You know, who was he? If you want to talk about when he passed.
Yeah, so my dad was a very serious, traditional Salvadorian man. Like you looked at him and all of my friends were terrified of him. But the second that you got on his good side, he's like, all right, I trust you. He would like shower you with love and food, and just his energy it could light up an entire room. But when he was mad, it was everybody's problem. Like, tenía un carácter tremendo ese señor. Like, I cannot even explain, like, the days that, like, when he got on our nerves, like, it was just, like, a different kind of, like, pestering. That, like, he knew everybody's red button. Like, when he was mad, it was his job to make everybody else mad. Like, but at the same time, like, when I was going through it, you know, throughout my adolescence, like, he always knew what to say, like, no matter what I was going through. And, like, I don't know, like, I feel like the bond that he and I had was like none other. Like, my father lived a very carefree life for a very long time. And when he realized that he was, like, 45 years old and, like, he was still out partying every weekend, he was like, maybe I should get my shit together. And, like, he had kids along the way, but he was never really there for any of them, and he wanted that experience to, like, really be there for a child. And he, like, had always dreamed about having a little girl. And so when he met my mom, he was like, I want to have a little girl. And so he manifested me. And I'm glamorous and everything, you know. But, yeah, he and I were extremely close. Like, he confided in me and about a lot of things, and I confided in him a little bit more than with my mom, because my mom, like, tended to lecture me a little bit more when I would, you know, open up to her about stuff, and my dad would listen. Like, I was a lot more like my dad than my mom. And I feel like my mom and I butted heads a lot, and my dad was kind of the mediator between us. And like there was just a point in time where like he wasn't there 100%. Like he was still around, but like his health really like decayó bastante en muy poco tiempo. Like he would always go to the doctors. Like he was diabetic, so he had his own health problems that he was trying to take care of, and like he ate really clean. Like he was very active. We have 2 German Shepherd dogs, and at the time we only had one when he was around, but he was always like going to the park and playing with him, and like the bond that they had was like none other. And like when he got sick, like I noticed a shift in my dog too. Like he definitely felt that kind of energy. And like when he went to the doctor for some kind of a stomach pain, like they were like, this doesn't look good, but we can't really see unless we do like all these tests. And so it was a very uncertain time, and like I was the one that took him to the hospital because he didn't want to tell anybody else. He knew my mom would be like, why didn't you tell me sooner? And like I don't know, he was like, if I can just deal with it on my own and fix it on my own, I don't have to like worry anybody else. Like he was very much like, I'll take care of my own shit. And I could tell when he would get in those moods. And so I'm like, aunque no me quería ir, yo me le pegaba. I'm just like, even if it's just to drive, like you don't have to worry about parking or nothing. And so I think that's why, like during that time, he confided in me the most. So when we got the news that he had cancer in his liver and it had eventually spread into his lungs, it was the middle of August, and they were like, it's stage 4, so there's not really a point in doing any kind of chemo. It's just kind of waiting it out to see, you know, what we can do. And of course we tried all the natural remedies. We tried just kind of praying and leaving it out to the universe, but it happened very, very fast. And we were in and out of the hospital very frequently in that time. And within about 3 weeks' time, he was gone, unfortunately. And it was really tough to process everything because of how fast it all happened. But maybe like a week after we got that initial diagnosis, he was like, okay, maybe it's time to tell my wife. And so he went all this time without telling anybody, and I'm like, the entire time I was like, you have to tell them at some point. I knew. I was the only one that knew. And I was like everybody can tell that you're not like, you know, the way that you usually are. Like I think it's time. And so when we finally had that conversation with everybody else, like there was just a huge shift in everything that happened. And like all of the assets, like we have a family business that he and I would run. Everything was thankfully under my mom's name, but all other assets like his cars and like the house, which was the biggest one, was only under his name, and he had no will and nothing. So even though he was in his last days, like si no nos poníamos las pilas, like we would be left in the streets pretty much. So you know, it was a tough time for sure. But
I think that's one of the toughest things to do is you get hit with something so big, right? And then there's still all the little things in the back that you're just like, how I barely want to get up, you know, I don't even want to talk, and you're telling me like I have to plan a whole funeral, you know, and all of this. It's heavy. During
COVID too, like we could not be there with him as much as we would have wanted to because of how delicate he was and because of all of the restrictions. Like I feel like that period of time lately has just like affected so many different ways of like life that we never would have thought of really before, you know. It's things that maybe we're taking for granted, and it's like every moment you have with them during a time like that is precious. Like you do not waste a single second.
Yeah. And it's just like you know, I think it's hard when you lose somebody. Like, for example, us, our grandma, my mom's mom, actually passed away 3 months before my dad. The difference with that, though, is that my grandmother was older and she was on hospice. So when she passed away, it hurt, right? It hurt. But there was a sense of, like, I don't even want to say relief, but we knew how much she was suffering. We knew. And, like, so when she passed, I mean, yeah, there was a bit of, like, okay, ya está descansando en paz, like, for real. But then
You saw the life cycle close.
yeah. But in your situation with your father and our situation with our dad, we didn't think that he wasn't going to be there the next day anymore, you know? He, like, for us, you know, my dad did have kidney failure, and he was going to dialysis, and he was working towards getting a transplant. So there was that big hope that, like, oh, like, he's going to have his transplant, he's going to get better. And then we got COVID, and within days he was gone, you know? And the thing is that, like, it was just so sudden, so unexpected, and it's just like, okay, like, and now I know it was a very traumatic experience, like, after a million therapy sessions. I'm just like, okay, yeah, but...
And I also, like, I know it's different for everybody, but I feel, I can't ever help to feel that I feel like we all got robbed of something, you know, and, like, not being there by their side to say goodbye. Like, life took that from me. Yeah. You know, and it's probably one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to accept is it was beautiful to see my grandma's life. You know, I got to see every stage of her life. I got to see her cycle close, and I didn't get that with my dad. Yeah. And I feel like that has been my biggest struggle in grieving, you know, and that's another thing that I think, you know, if you don't mind sharing, like, what your grief journey has been like, because it looks different for everybody, and nobody knows what it's going to look like until it actually happens.
Truly. I feel like my grief journey, because, like, for the first part of, like, his actual illness, he was like, no, don't tell anybody, I'm going to get better, when the doctors were telling us, like, the complete opposite. So I was already kind of like expecting the worst, just to, like, give myself a little emotional cushion, you know, because I never had that period of, like, denial, like, this isn't real, this can't be happening. Like, it was very real. It was happening fast, and we had a lot of shit to get done before, you know, time was up, I guess. And I feel that because I was the eldest of my father's marriage with my mom, I had the responsibility of making sure that everything stayed in order, because all of the bills were handled between he and I. Like, all of the business situation was handled between he and I. All of the car payments were handled between he and I. All of everything. And my mom never had to worry about anything, because that's just, like, he wanted to make her life as easy as possible. But I feel like that really kind of hindered her when he wasn't there to be able to provide like that anymore. And because all of the responsibility was placed on me, like, my brother also wasn't aware of a lot of the day-to-day things that we had to do. And so I felt this tremendous pressure to be able to teach my family how to keep things running. But if I showed any kind of emotion, like, my mom would immediately start breaking down. And I just felt guilty for feeling my emotions around her, because I knew, like, she had her own kind of pain, and she was trying her best to, like, learn all of this as best as she could while still processing her emotions. And because we were all kind of like, well, what do we do now? Like, everything was so sudden that we're like, even though I was the one that worked with him closely, he still was a very old-fashioned man. And a lot of the secrets that he had, a lot of, like, the like sorry like a lot of the las movidas chuecas that he would do with the business like were kept to himself, and so we had a lot of questions and no answers, and I feel that I was numb at a certain point. I did not have time to feel my emotions. I would deal with it another day.
Yeah, and I was about to say, because you're talking about how, you know, you essentially had to show your family, like, the day-to-day of it. And, like, on top of that, like, you still had to grieve. Yeah. And, like, it's kind of like you pushed that aside.
That's exactly what I did. And then I got another full-time job on top of that to keep myself, keep myself busy. That's one of my toxic traits, is I don't face my heavy emotions head on. I just keep myself busy and I'll deal with that later. And I feel that at a certain point, I was overworking myself to the point where, like, I feel that my mom and my brother had already had their heaviest grieving moment. And because I saw that they were doing better, I was like, the floodgates opened and I was a mess, and I quit my job and I was having a quarter life crisis. And
I forget you're so much younger than us.
Honestly, though, I think so many things that you said right now.
There's so many similarities, right?
There's a ton of similarities.
Dude, the biggest one that I really quickly want to point out, they have a janitorial business. Yeah. My dad worked in janitorial and had one his entire life. And I do want to just kind of touch on one of the similarities where you mentioned that, you know, you're in that chiclet, right? You were always with him. Same. Like, I would, like, if my dad was just going to go somewhere, like, ¿Dónde vas? ¿Con quién? I couldn't take us. And, like, he would get so fed up with me. He's like, just come with me. Be like, okay. And I'd just sit in the car and be like, carpool.
She used to work very close to him for a time. And she was like, she's like, waiting for Dad to call me so we can go to lunch.
Dude, I would work, like, 20 minutes away.
So one more similarity that I want to bring up is, you mentioned your mom grieving and how it was difficult for you to grieve around your mom. And that's one thing that we actually did, like, mother-daughter therapy, because it was a really big thing that was going around with us, is that I was grieving, she was grieving, everybody was grieving. But, and I'm not saying, like, my mom was the only one feeling a certain type of way. We all were, you know, but it hurt me to see her so broken that I didn't want to show how broken I was too.
So we hid it. We wouldn't show. And, like, I feel like I didn't want, it's funny because back again, dude, the superstar of our show, our therapist. So we have the same therapist, and we signed disclosure so we can kind of, like, she can talk about us because
to each other.
We don't have any secrets.
Yeah.
And so the thing that she mentioned is, like, it's funny that all of you guys are trying not to grieve in front of the other because you all don't want to hurt each other. Yeah. But we all felt the same way. I was just showing my grief a certain way. Lizzie was showing hers, and my mom was showing hers a different way, I mean. And I did, that actually wasn't the similarity. So there's another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on in regards to your story, where you mentioned that, you know, you were always with your dad, so he confided in you about his diagnosis. And I don't know if you know this, but my dad did the same thing to me. It wasn't, like, a long time. It was just the day before. Yeah. So he got admitted, and he actually called me immediately after they told him he had COVID. And my dad was deathly afraid of COVID, and, like, we would get in arguments too. But, like, there was just a lot of arguing before he got sick, which there's a lot of regret with now. But, like,
again, another similarity. Very much. Hard-headed.
Not so. He was a hard-headed Mexican traditional man, you know. And then it's he actually called me after he got the COVID diagnosis, and he was like, "I have COVID," and he broke down crying while I was on FaceTime with him, and I had to, like, talk him through it and be like, "It's fine, you know, like, you're gonna be okay. Like, you just have to do like medications or I don't know. I think I made some stuff up because I didn't know. Deep down inside, I was like deathly afraid. But he was verbal for a while, and then I think after the 4th day, he was in the hospital. He did have to go on a ventilator, and he was nonverbal at that point. And so from that day, so he got admitted the 16th. The 19th, which is her daughter's birthday, was the last day that we actually had a conversation with him. And from the 19th, and he passed away on the 1st. So it was about like a week and a half period or less where the communication about him was between the doctors and me. Because for some reason, I know I put myself down. I don't know why I think because I was always his point of contact at Kaiser. So they called me, and it never changed. But I, too, started kind of not hoping for the worst, but like expecting the worst to give myself a little, it's like we were protecting ourselves in a way, right? We were protecting ourselves. And I mean, also though, like I was the one having those conversations with the doctors where they were telling me like, he is exactly the same as all of the other patients that we put on ventilators. And like, there's a lot of feelings when it comes to with the doctors that I was working at. I know that at that point they were seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases of people getting COVID, being put on a ventilator and dying. But I think they might have forgotten a little bit how to still remember that we have never gone through it. So for them, it was easy to be like, it's not going to get better. It's not looking good. And it was really hard for me to take that information and tell my sister and tell my mom, you know. So there were days where I was just sitting there, and at this point, you know, my dad's completely like not talking, fully life support on a ventilator, and I'm just like, it's gonna happen any day now. And so I remember one of our family friends, like, because I think I mentioned the last podcast or the one before, I stopped answering calls, but there were still certain people that I was answering. And one of my friends called me, and she was like, as long as there's life, there's hope. And I was just telling her, like, you don't understand, like, these doctors are drilling me, telling me that it's the end, telling me that, you know, at this point, he's only alive because of the ventilator. And I was like, and my family isn't understanding me, because I would try to tell my mom, and my mom would be like, but he's going to get better, but he's going to get better. And I would tell her, they're saying he's not. And then she wouldn't accept it. She was in denial. I think Lizzie was in denial. And I think at that point, I also didn't get that chance to have the denial, because they were just drilling it. Like, he's not going to make it. You need to tell your family that he's not going to make it. And I was just like, I can't do this. So I had like a breakdown, and I ended up switching the point of contact to myself to my sister. And so I think I don't know if you noticed, but like when that happened, when they were the day before, they had told me that, and then the next day after is when we got the call that his heart stopped. And like, I hate that I have this feeling, but there was just sense of just like, I was able to let go finally, because I was just waiting for that moment to happen. I didn't want that moment to happen, but I feel like maybe because the doctors were talking to me so much that I knew it was going to happen. So for me, every day just felt like it was just dragging more and more to the inevitable. And then there was a lot of guilt on my end because of that, because my family didn't have that feeling. I did. So, but I don't know if it's because they were constantly telling me, like, this is the end, like, it's gonna happen, this is the end, like, you need to tell your family, and I'm like, and I remember telling the doctor, like, I'm telling my family and they don't believe me, what do I do? And the doctor couldn't answer me.
I didn't know that.
I know. And so we have Prosecco for a reason.
So I remember when you switched me over to the point of contact, and I remember like they would call around between 1 and 4 p.m. So there was this like, I would see the clock at 1 o'clock, and I would get this like sense of anxiety, like, when are they calling? Why aren't they calling?
He only
yet?
called once a day.
Yeah, it was once a day, and
Oh, and on top of that, our mom ended up going to the hospital too because she couldn't breathe anymore.
No.
She did, yeah.
So both of our parents were in the hospital. And then the worst part is that, like, my husband was getting really sick too, but
he probably should have gone.
he should have gone, and he didn't, because I don't know if you want to tell that story about that conversation you guys had. Go ahead, sorry. What were we gonna say?
No, so Nancy switched me to the point of contact. You know, and my mom, obviously, for obvious reasons, it hit her really hard. And she also had to go to the hospital because she was very low on oxygen. I just remember, like, I was, my first, like, breakdown point was when I dropped her off. I called my aunt and I told her, like, hey, you know, my mom's in there too now. And then I just started crying, and I was just like, I don't know what's happening. Like, why is this happening? And she was like, just cry. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but just cry. Like, don't hold it in and just cry.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like, I cried and felt better after, went back home. I think before my mom was going to get released, I was like, hey, I know we can't see him, but she's already there, and she has COVID too. Like,
She was just on a different floor.
Let her see him. Like, just let it happen. Just, you know, it took so much running around, and I don't know how it ended up working out. Somebody miscommunicated the message. They released her, and they didn't let her go see him. So I called because I was just so frustrated. I was like, I don't know if any of us are going to get to see him anymore. Like, you guys promised.
Yeah.
Let her go. Like, let her see him. And then they were like, well, we don't have anybody to take her. And I was like, I'll take her. Like, I have COVID too. Like, let me in. Let me go see him with her. Like, I'll push her in. You know, I'll take her back out. And so they did. Like, they let that happen. We got to see him. And the next day was when he passed away. And I got the phone call. I think it was the first day that we were able to go out again after, like, having COVID. So we
By
took
go
the
out,
kids.
you mean literally to, like, our driveway.
We walked to the park. We went to the park. We had the kids there. Everyone was playing, and then they called me because his heart had stopped, and we didn't want to sign the.
I forgot about that. They want so that's right. So when I told the doctor, like, I don't know what to do, I'm telling them that it's the end, and they're not believing me. They were hounding me because they wanted me to sign. They didn't want me to sign, but they kept suggesting to sign the do not resuscitate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
we
because
never
we
did.
hadn't signed it, like, I hear, like, all the machines in the back, and, you know, he's like, if we keep going, we're gonna break his ribs. Like, you have to decide. It's like, shit, I'm not with my mom. I'm not with my sister. Like, why am I at the park? You know, I should be home. And I told him, I was like, just stop. Like, don't hurt him. Just stop. And, you know, like, go home. And I have to tell my mom and my sister. And it's just seeing all of us so broken. Like, you're just like, are we ever gonna get better?
Yeah.
What do we do? You know, like, I don't know what my life looked like without my dad. I've never thought about it. And just, it's been a 2-year journey figuring out life after dad.
I feel that. I would always joke, like, when my dad would fix something for me that I never thought could be fixed so simply. Like, I was like, what am I going to do without you? And he's like, I don't even want to think about that.
Yeah.
Then it happened, and I was like, well.
You gotta figure it out now.
Yeah.
What do I do now? Yeah.
Dude,
My dad was bad at fixing stuff, actually.
Yeah, he was.
He was good at hiring to fix.
Yeah.
He was good at like critical thinking, problem solving, but
Yeah.
him actually going and fixing like a doorknob or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that I married a plumber, he was like, yes. You guys are good at plumbing.
And my dad made a comment about my husband. Because of course, like I said, I was always with him. I was the baby. I was his baby.
Yeah.
I was spoiled
Yep.
together to the max. I don't care what anyone ever thinks. I fully embraced it even back then. And, my husband and my dad, I think they had maybe a year that they got to like know each other and stuff. But he didn't tell me this. He actually told my sister this. And like... So, what I mean by chiqueada is, like, he would do everything for me, right? Like, I wouldn't even put my own gas, dude. Like, I was like, how the fuck do you put gas? And then my wonderful husband is very similar in the way to my, like, dad. Have you guys heard how you marry your father?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. But I don't know what Ricardo did. I don't know. You might know exactly.
Oh, Ricardo was fixing up Nancy's lunch. And, Nancy was working from home. Ricardo, I think, forgot. So he runs upstairs. And he's like cooking up a meal super fast.
He's like, my girlfriend's diabetic. I have to feed her.
And like frantic, just stressed out. And me and my dad are just sitting down drinking our coffee. And he's just like, La Nancy nunca va a crecer. And I was like, what? Like, I thought he was going to start talking shit about my sister. And then he's like, siempre va a ser un baby. And then I was like, no, she's good now. And he's like, no, she's like, mira Ricardo. He does everything for her. And then I was like, yes, but how much do you actually love seeing that? And he was like, oh, I know.
And not just that, who is the one that got me used to that?
He did.
My dad. So obviously, I'm going to end up with someone who would treat me the same way as my dad.
100%. I agree. And now that we're on this topic about, Ricardo, I do especially, and I don't know, maybe you do too, I want to thank my husband for the way that he's been there for me through my grief journey, and just the person that he stepped up to be that I didn't know I needed, and just, I broke into so many pieces, and he picked them all up and just waited. And it's still in some parts of my life that aren't all there yet. It's just waiting. And he stepped up when I couldn't be a mother to my kids. He stepped up when he saw that I couldn't handle my mom's grief. He stepped up in so many, and even to the point where my entire career history changed, because I had a full-time job when my dad passed, and he saw how shitty I got at it and was like, hey, take a break. You need to step back, focus on what we want to do as a family, and just that. And I think I didn't realize how much it would help having him there. And I think for you too, seeing how much Ricardo has loved and cared for you during that time, and I'm sure for you as well, it helps to have your partner there.
Truly, I really wish that Nate would have met my dad. He came into my life shortly after everything was going on, and he didn't see every detail. I wasn't ready to talk about every detail, but he saw what I was going through because it was there. I'm not very good at hiding my emotions, but he was very patient with me. When I was not ready to talk about something, I didn't need to say anything. He was just there. He made me feel safe. He made me feel comforted. He made me feel like I wasn't alone in anything, and I never am able to fully put it into words how much I appreciate him. Sorry.
it's okay.
No, it's okay.
And I think this moment is dedicated to you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for being so patient with us.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I could say, like, if you were in this situation, I'd be exactly the same, and I'm sure I would, but, like,
Yeah.
y'all really,
You
What
held
is
it down for us.
y'all really held it down when we were literally, like, breaking.
Yeah. So yes. Thank you. Thank you guys. As we
Thank you, men.
Shout out to y'all.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. Man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you.
Rowan.
I knew I should have gotten a tissue box for this one. I didn't want to jinx us.
Yeah. But I kind of want to get back to it because I know I don't want to make it like super long.
It's all a
But-
2-part episode.
For you guys, I think what has been your biggest challenges that you've been able to overcome in all of this?
I feel that there was a lot of I had a lot of guilt, and it's specifically because, again, superstar of the show, my therapist, she said, you know, what I'm feeling is survivor's guilt. And it's interesting because you're like, okay, survivor's guilt, you weren't in like an accident with him, and you know, you made it, he didn't. But the thing is that my dad and I had the same exact illnesses, and out of the two, he was taking care of his health and I wasn't. And yet, the one who got sick and ended up passing away because of all the complications from my illnesses was him. And I spent a lot of time afterwards angry at myself and like at the world, because like it should have been me. He was doing so good to get better and I wasn't, and it wasn't me. And you know, when we had his funeral, the priest there made a comment during his, like, I don't know what you call it, but it's like when they're speaking and then like they're like dedicating, I don't know what it's called.
Is that the obituary?
It's not an obituary, I believe. I don't know. Maybe somebody knows and you guys can tell us. But he like was saying the like prayers and stuff, but then he took a moment to like kind of like make what he was saying kind of resonate with us. And he said that, and the way he said it, he was so confident in the way he said it. And he said, there was a moment where God asked him, somebody in your family has to go. And that my dad was the one that volunteered and took that place. And dude, that shit broke me. Because I was already having those feelings that like it should have been me. Like I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't, you know, doing the best that I could do for myself. And yet here he was doing all of that. And it like took him. And I spent months and months just like battling with myself that like it should be me that's gone. Like it shouldn't have been him. He should be here with his grandkids. He should be here with his wife. And I think for me, overcoming knowing that like maybe there was a conversation he had with the hiree and saying one of you guys has to go, and he said like me, like I volunteer from you. I'm sorry.
But he would say that though.
It's from the Hunger Games.
He would. No, I remember when he said that.
The priest.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's definitely been the biggest challenge for me, like being able to know that like no, like I think that like what I was feeling at first was just like that there was a lot of guilt. There was a guilt for a few different reasons, but the biggest one was the survivor's guilt that I was feeling. And like I realized that like, okay, no, it wasn't my fault, because I think it like at the end of the day it felt like it was my fault. Like, well, you were the one that was supposed to go, and because he loves you and he's your dad, it was him that ended up leaving, you know. That definitely was one of the hardest things for me. And also, I know we haven't really brought it up, but there was also the fact that, like, I don't know, I think us in our immediate family definitely felt this, but kind of bypassing grieving my grandma.
Yeah.
Because it's not that we didn't grieve her, and it's not that we didn't care, but I think that the fact that his death hit us so hard, and grandma's death we were expecting, that, like, there was a lot of guilt afterwards of, like, kind of, like, forgetting about her.
Yeah.
And
I absolutely felt that.
And there, I mean, for me, it was the guilt. Like, there was survivor's guilt, there was guilt about grandma, and then, you know, there was a lot of guilt of, I wish the last moments with him weren't the way they were. I wish we weren't fighting so much. I wish I would have known it was the end, so I could have spent more time with him. And I don't even want to say I'm fully over it yet. Like, some of the guilt, the survivor's guilt, I've definitely am dealing with it better. The guilt about my grandma passing before him and kind of not grieving her because we were so choked up about my dad's death. I still feel that guilt for me of the last moments with him. I remember the last moment I saw him, and I was working, and I was on my computer, and I was like, bye, Dad. And he walked out the door, and I saw him walk out, and then I didn't get up, and I didn't go hug him. And I don't think I'll ever get over that.
Yeah. That's definitely something huge and very difficult to overcome. But I am glad that you're getting the help that you need for it. And again, there is no right or wrong way to do it. There is no right or wrong way to feel about it. And I think all of us wish that there could have been, like, so many things that would have gone different. And again, that's why the three of us, I feel, look at life so different now, you know, and just appreciate every single moment of it, and the good and the bad, and just hold on to every moment, because we've been through that part where we don't know, you know, we don't know if we'll be here tomorrow, next week, and we definitely see it different now.
Do you feel like that's also something you overcame, or is it something different?
I think for me, the hardest part of everything was just seeing the progression of him in general, just because of how much he took care of himself, how much he made an effort. Like, he was a 76-year-old man when he passed, and he was full of so much life. Like, he had so many more projects and aspirations that he wanted to get done, and then all of a sudden he wasn't able to even get up to walk to the restroom anymore by himself. And just seeing how everything affected my family, and that specific portion of being there for them more than for myself, and helping them through that, because my dad never really thought he was going to get so sick so fast, and because of that, he never took the precautions necessary to leave us stress-free. And of course, we never wanted to think about that either, but we would mention it because he had many other kids who, you know, hay veces que la gente es interesada cuando les conviene, and during tough times is when that arises a little bit more. And my mom and my brother really harbored so much anger because they were the ones to continuously tell him, you need to get your shit straight, you know. And we barely had time to do some things, and that's a whole other very long story, but there were just so many more questions than answers. And seeing the way that my brother was not doing so well. Like, I very clearly remember the last coherent conversation I had with him before he was put onto hospice. And one of the main things he would tell me was that he wasn't done with my brother yet because he was 19 at the time, and he wanted to be there for him for more. Like, he wanted to provide the same college experience that he did for me. Like, for him, education was everything. He said, I'm not a rich man, but knowledge is priceless. And I, to this day, am completely debt free because of every sacrifice that he and my mom put.
That's awesome.
And that is one of the biggest blessings that I have. And to be able to put that knowledge to use on a day-to-day basis, like not only in my professional life, but in my personal relationships, is just like, I feel like I'm using it to its full extent. And to be able to use that gift that he gave me to help my mom and brother overcome a lot of what they were struggling with. Of course, we all still have a lot of unanswered questions, but just the progression of how far we've come, and almost, like, this September will be 3 years since his passing, which is insane how fast time flies, but we've come so far. And to be able to speak about this without, like, before I couldn't even think about him without breaking down, and now to be able to share this with other people who've also gone through the same thing is just, it's huge. And I appreciate you guys for opening up your hearts to me and for allowing me to also have a safe space to talk about this.
I was doing good until then.
I'm sorry.
That's amazing. And I love seeing the progress that you guys have made. And I know, like, I don't know your mom, I don't know your brother, but
Oh my god.
I feel
Her
like
mom. I love her. I've only met her once. And I wanted to hug her. I was so excited to meet your mom. I want our moms to be friends, by the way.
I think they would be
I
such
feel
good
like
they would-
friends.
Dude, your mom, I went over with Ricardo one time because we went out to go party.
I remember that. I think you guys stayed there, right?
We did, and her mom, Ricardo, my husband was hung over off his ass. And I remember waking up and her mom made us food. And I was like in such,
Salvadorian food.
yeah, I was in such a bad mood. And she made casamiento,
Yeah.
which is rice and beans. It was the best breakfast of my life with like avocado. I was like, yeah.
And I love seeing the mom progress.
Truly.
You know, my mom has come a long way, and
We need to parent trap them.
yeah, we do.
We'll
Both
go to
of
dinner
them.
sometime.
Like, hey, you
I'm
guys want to
down.
be best friends? We think you guys are going to be best friends.
Oh, I love that. I love hearing that. And how is your brother doing?
He's doing much better. He still has a lot of his own internal work to do, but just the growth that I've seen in him, like, from the second that he found out the news, it's like a switch flipped in him. He was like, okay, something's got to change, and it can either be for the best or for the worst, and it's going to be a bumpy ride regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, like, we sat down as a family and gave each other a little bit of tough love because we were going to face the hardest part, because he had just been transported into the ICU. So there was no more hiding at that point, and there was just a lot to process. And he, obviously, when I told him about the conversation that I had with my dad, he was like, well, that really saddens me, because he thought that I couldn't take care of myself, and he didn't think that I'd be okay without him. And I don't believe that he said it with that intention. I think he just wanted to be there for longer with his family. He felt that he didn't have enough time because he spent so much other time doing a bunch of other shit, and he was always working. And, you know, he was finally retired, and thankfully, like, COVID was a blessing in disguise in my household, because I had to move back home during my last semester of college, and I spent every waking second with that man, whether he liked it or not. But we were working all the time. We were doing, like, we would cook. He was heavily into planting and gardening, and we were just watering his plants all the time and doing
Diana's
that.
house Diana's family
I saw
garden.
the story.
Yeah, that's her backyard.
That's
dude.
just a little
love
section
that.
of it. Like it's a jungle in there.
I love it though, because when I went and you were telling me how it was like your dad and mom's, like I can like feel her dad there. Like your dad is in that garden.
My
with
mom
you guys.
taught herself how to garden better to be able to keep his garden alive, and it's like quadrupled in size.
Oh my goodness.
It's insane. She still has some of the orchids. My dad is huge into orchids, and he gifted her one just before he passed,
Dude.
and it still blooms every year. She takes care of them, and it's her prized possession.
I love that so much.
Her dad would give my mom orchids.
All the
I
time.
love that.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that I actually wanted to bring up, and you said that when you were at their house and you were at the garden, like you felt her dad there. I feel like there's always, for me, just yesterday. This week has been a little tough because I remember it's my daughter's birthday the day after. Like he just sent us that last text message, and it just kind of like brings you back to like every day that happened until the day that he passed. And I had a little breakdown yesterday, but I kept hearing his voice like over and over, and I feel like every time I've been in a situation where I start to miss him a lot, we have like these like little connections where one time I remember I was listening to this song over and over in my head, but I didn't play it. And then you come upstairs and you're just humming it. And I was just like, oh my God.
That happened for us. I think at least for me, my dad was very big into music. He even was like a little DJ for a while.
Yeah.
Like DJ Imperio, right? And that was like the beginning of all like the mixes. And it's music. Like sometimes we'll all have the same song stuck in our head. For me, my breakdown was last week.
Yeah.
And it was.
I walked in on her and my mom having a breakdown.
So that was the weird. So it's like we don't plan it, but we have our breakdowns at the same time.
Yeah.
So Ricardo took me out because I was really stressed out last Friday, and we went to go get lavender lattes. And then on the drive home, I think I just had a Beatles song stuck in my head, and like I didn't think about it when I had that Beatles song stuck in my head. But I listened to the Beatles because of my dad. My middle name, Michelle, is based off of the song Michelle by the Beatles that my dad picked. And then, I was hearing them and I was just like, like crying. And then I get home and I can hear the music playing in my mom's room. And I open the door and she's like cuddled up in her bed, like listening to music. And then I look at her and then I'm just like, and I just start crying. And like she does too because I don't know what it was. Like it was just at the same exact time.
Yeah.
Maybe also it's just been a little harder lately. Our dog that we've had since he was 8 weeks old, my dad's best friend also, he passed away last month, and that was a really hard time too, just because for me it felt like an entire section of my life is gone forever. My dad, my dog, and my grandma. So many memories I have, the four of us.
Yeah.
And it like kind of like reopened the wound a bit, I think is the best way I can describe it, because it's just like this whole part of my life officially is gone. Because after Tyson passed away, it's just like, fuck, I can never relive any of those moments anymore with any of them. And like there was a joke that my dad and my grandma had. I don't even know if I would consider it a joke, but my dad, he was a big jokester, and he would always joke around, and he would tell my grandma, who was my mom's mom, that if me and your daughter split up, who are you gonna go with? And my grandma would say, with you. She'd go with my dad.
She wouldn't even think about it.
She would just immediately, me voy contigo. And so even like when my dad passed away, like when we were like getting better, we would joke around and be like, damn, she really took him, didn't she? She picked him.
That's hella funny.
Yeah. Because they shared their
gravesite.
Their gravesite together.
Burn.
Yeah. And he would always say that, like, oh, actually, mom kind of joked about it, and I just started laughing because when Tyson was getting really sick and he stopped walking, she was like, she's like, Tyson, me ganaste. You know, like, because, you know, she misses him. And she thought that maybe she'd go before Tyson. And he's like, no, I'm going to beat you to it. No, I'm going to go see my dad.
Yeah, they were best friends.
They were.
What about you, Liz? What do you think you've overcame?
I think, like you guys, I am still working on it. But my biggest thing was grieving as a mother of young children and just being there for them. But at first I would feel guilty if I had like my breakdowns, if I had my moments and I wasn't there for them. And there was a time where we hadn't started therapy yet, and I was just like, we need this, because I was giving Zoe a bath and I had a breakdown. I got distracted. She got distracted. She was playing, and I was on the floor and I was crying. And out of nowhere, I just feel these wet little hands on my back. And I was just like, and she's small. She's very petite. And she got herself out of the shower by herself, barely 2 years old, and is comforting me. And I'm just like, you're not supposed to do that. Like, it's me. I'm supposed to be comforting you, and I'm not. And just, when we were living in the mountains still, I kept them in school in San Jose, and I wouldn't take them for days because I couldn't get myself out of the house.
I'm surprised you did not get kicked out of that school.
We got a warning. But, that's when I started taking them, because I was like, I'm hurting them. They should be in school. It's fun for them. They should be having a good time, and I don't take them. And I remember one time, it was after the funeral, after everybody had left, it was you, me, Mom, and the kids all in her bed, and we laid down there and would go like in and out of sleep, and the kids were just watching TV.
It was the Tuesday after.
Yeah, and it was probably like 1 p.m. and the kids were like, we're hungry, and I was like, fuck, dude, I haven't fed my kids, and it's funny, but it's just like, I'm neglecting my children. Like, I need help. I need to get out of this, and again, superstar, my therapist, when I talked to her about like everything that I was feeling and like all this guilt, and then she was like, like, what's the thing that they tell you on the airplane? Put your mask first. And then I was like, I should have known that, because I used to do that for a living.
She was a flight attendant.
And I'm not putting my mask first, and I think that's been my biggest thing that I've overcome is, I feed them now. I remember.
On time.
They go to school routinely, and, but accepting that I am grieving, that I lost my dad, I'm grieving, and that I'm also raising these kids as best as I can, and that when I have my time and my moments, I need to put my mask on first, and I need to put myself first. And again, like, it takes a village, because there's days where Pablo steps up if he sees that I'm not doing well. There's days where my mom's just like, hey, like, you two should really go out, let me watch your kids. There's times where you guys have offered to be like, hey, like, go out, like, go do something, like, and I love that, just having that support system, you guys all there, you now, like, being able to talk to you about all of this. So I think that's my biggest thing that, again, still working on, but I'm so happy with where we are now. And even though these are ongoing issues that we may never fully accept and understand why they happened, we're in a much better place than we were a couple years ago.
You said 4 years, huh? For you?
It's coming up on 3.
3 years. Yeah.
But I do want to end it on a happy note because I feel like that is something that our dads very much have in common. So if it's okay with you guys, do you guys want to share your favorite memory of your dad?
You should start.
For me, I feel that my favorite memory is when he would force me to go grocery shopping with him. I dreaded it in the moment, but he would make me go through all of the apples, all of the little avocados to pick the right produce. Now I know how to pick good produce because of that. We'd go home and we'd cook a meal based on whatever we brought home. And the entire time that we were cooking, we were blasting salsa, we were blasting. He was huge on like Cuban cha-cha-cha. He liked danzones, he liked anything instrumental. And every single time he would play whatever song he was in the mood for, and he'd grab me and he'd spin me around and we'd be dancing, and it wasn't even fully coordinated, but it was that pure joy and bliss that we had nothing else to worry about. And it's because of the way that he would make me be so involved in the cooking process that I love cooking now, and I love experimenting with new dishes, and all of that was instilled into me because of his passion for cooking well and for just putting joy into everything that he did. I feel that that is something that I try to do to the best of my ability, because I feel like while we were grieving, it was also gray and gloomy, and now that I feel like I'm in a little bit of a better place, I'm able to re-inject that joy into myself and really cherish those memories instead of crying and being sad because he's not here anymore, because of course that feeling never goes away, but
Yeah.
at the same time I'm grateful for all of what he brought into my life.
That's really cool though. I can see that. I can see you guys dancing, and I love that. I love.
What's your favorite memory of Dad?
So my favorite memory of Dad is actually.
Wait, bigger challenge. Not involving your kids.
Oh my gosh, that's what I was gonna say. So okay, let me share 2.
Okay.
Because I got to see, one of my favorite memories of my dad is when my daughter starts walking, and Tiago's like playing, doing whatever, and Dad's like with him, but he's also with Z, and you know, she's just like in her little cheery stuff, and just seeing that part of him, and he was the most incredible, like amazing dad, but he fucking killed it as a grandpa, and I love that he got to meet them for that little time. And he was so good at it. Like, it came so naturally. And I loved that dynamic, that relationship that they had. But actually, so my favorite memory of Dad, if it's just me and him, it was actually when we were making Rice Krispies. He was the best person to make Rice Krispie with, because he would, you know, do it all, and he would let us eat some of it while it was still melting. And it just, you knew, like, he would always, like, do it on, like, Friday nights or something when it was just, like, us and him. And, like, again, like, similar. It's a kitchen story, but, like, that memory just plays over and over and over. And I love it. Like, I love that feeling of, like, looking at the, like, melted marshmallow, because I know, like, Dad was right behind me.
I made Rice Krispies with their kids a couple months ago, and I let them eat it while it was melting.
I noticed that.
I gave her son the spoon. I would
Yeah.
get the spoon.
What's your favorite memory of Dad?
I don't know if I can describe it well, but he would have me, when I was little, he would have me step on his feet. and he would hold my hands, and then we'd dance. We'd go da-da, 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 da-da. And I just have so many memories of doing that, like dancing with my dad, but specifically when he would tell me to step on his feet. He would lift his foot up, and he'd make me go like that. And I don't know if you know this, but I do that with Zoe a lot.
I didn't notice that.
That's cute.
I do it with Zoe. Sometimes P's a little heavier now.
Yeah,
She's tall.
She's very tall. She's gonna be tall.
Yeah, Zoe's still a little petite little thing, so I'm like, ah. There's another one, but I don't want to hurt your feelings. And I have to say it now.
What is it?
When we used to live off of that house in McLaughlin, we were going on a walk. And I think at that time, you and him were fighting a lot. So I really want to make sure you're aware that you were fighting a lot with him during this time.
I was in my rebel stage.
And we're walking, and he puts his arm around me, and he goes, you know, you're my favorite. And I was like, I know.
I'm proud of it. Honestly, though, I think there's just a different relationship with the baby. It's one of a kind. So I totally support. And
He didn't mean it, obviously, but you know.
no, but
I think what he meant is at that moment, I was his favorite because you guys were fighting so much.
I remember that.
But yeah,
To our dads.
to our dads.
To our
Toast
dads.
to our
Toast.
dads, you guys. And thank you, Diana.
Thank you guys for having me.
See you next time.
Yes. Bye, guys.
I don't know which camera, so I looked at that one.